Hello and welcome to this latest webinar from ETI Software. I'm Greg Aston. I've been with ETI for around 8 years at this point, and I'm a product director. I primarily look after device management and analytics solutions. Today, as part of this webinar, we'll be looking at unified device management. So I'll be giving an explanation on what that is and how it fits into our product line. So aims of this webinar, we'll be looking to see some of the basics in the system of what a device looks like, how that's all recorded and what kind of data we have associated with a device record. We take a lot of the existing dynamics functionality, so I'll be talking about dynamics as we go on, as that's the basis for our SMP system. And it has a lot of pre-existing integration for things like IoT devices, and it has connected field service capabilities. But this is something that we've massively expanded on to suit the needs of the telecom industry and accommodate the type of devices that are required there. So then we'll see how different users then interact with those devices in the system, get an idea of what someone's day-to-day looks like and the touch points that they have with the device information that's available in the system. We'll be looking to cover areas such as field service, customer service, and any points generally that will take advantage of all that device-related functionality. From these user interactions, we'll begin to see the business benefits that the system offers to telecoms providers when they implement the SMP platform. So the ecosystem, what's in the toolkit of things that we're going to use? Well, I've already mentioned SMP. I know telecoms is a world full of acronyms, so I'll explain this one. So SMP being our service management platform. So this is, as I mentioned, an extended version of Microsoft Dynamics. So we use Dynamics as the baseline for this, and then we've taken the data model and various different aspects of the system, UI, APIs, all this kind of thing, and extended them out to make it telecom specific. This has given us a really good basis for things like CRM, functionality, customer service, field service, marketing, sales. There's probably others, infrastructure, other components of the system. There's a number of different applications that make up the overall service management platform, and we'll be focusing on a few of those today. It is a cloud-hosted solution, so it's provided as software as a service from ETI. There's no need for any on-premise servers or the typical IT overhead that might come with running a system like this. So it's all hosted there in the cloud. You log in and get access to all the tools and all the capabilities that are within the platform. Wherever possible, when we've done these extensions, we've been using the TM forum as our basis. So where we've had to extend the data model or add any API interfaces to the system, the TM forum has very much been our guide. We wanted to follow industry standards, things that users will be familiar with, as well as for ease of integration with other systems. We're seeing more and more platforms adopt TM forum standards, so we want to be as plug and play as possible where we come across other systems that we need to integrate into the system. But yeah, we're really just going to be scratching the surface of what is in SMP today, as we just focus on one particular area. But keep an eye out. In future, we will be doing many other webinars on SMP and its capabilities, so be sure to tune in for those. Now, for existing ETI customers, you may be familiar with Triad. That's our OSS platform, and as you'd expect, SMP fully integrates with Triad and uses Triad for its network provisioning, network interactions, everything that's required as a result of taking actions in SMP. So all of those business processes, those day-to-day processes that you'll have going on, where those need to go out and provision or where we need to get information from the network, Triad will be the go-to for that, but it will very much function as a black box in this scenario. SMP is going to be your window on the world and your window into your business, essentially, as we're going to be touching so many different business areas within the system. But Triad is there to get us to the network and get things set up. And the same goes for other ETI products as well. So things like ACS, where needed, we'll put that in play and have that interacting with some devices, as you'll see when I'm moving through the demo side of things. Anyway, that's probably enough for our initial slides. Let's jump into the system and have a look around and begin to see how devices are used and devices are shown within the system, and then we'll see some other key touch points for those as well. Okay, now we're into the live portion of the session. So I'm in an SMP platform. We're going to have a look around. I think first of all, we'll do a bit of orientation. So SMP, as I mentioned, is based on Microsoft Dynamics. So if you're familiar with Dynamics, I'm sure the look and feel of this will be familiar to you. But for those that are new, again, I'm in on a particular screen here, ready for demonstration, but let's just start at the top here. So what I'm going to do is open up the application screen. Now I'm in here as a full administrator. I have access to everything in the system, but you'll see the various different apps that are on screen here. These are more where people spend their day. So if I'm a salesperson, I'll be in telco sales. If I'm marketing, then of course the marketing module. We have things like field service, customer service. Both of those we'll get into as we go on, as well as the actual infrastructure and resource management side of things. But yeah, I'm going to be getting a real overall view of the system, and we're going to be moving through these. I'll highlight when we change application in the system, but this is to give you an idea of the focus for different personas within the system and people who have different business needs that will present data in very different ways and let people interact with different parts of the system as is relevant. So we are starting out in the mapping tools, mainly just because it's a good visual, right? So this gives you an idea of the types of assets, devices, equipment, logical resources, all of this kind of stuff that we track through SMP. And what we're seeing on screen here is an area, and you'll see these are broken down into service areas. So these are different territories. The service areas will be used as part of the sales and customer onboarding process. So depending on which service area a premise falls into, that'll define the services that they can purchase, as well as other decisions that we'll make through the sales and field service workflows. But as well as the service areas, we actually have equipment and places as well within those service areas. So you'll see on screen here just things like ONTs. So that's something we'll be touching on a lot throughout this session. So within this demo system, we have these ONTs populated into an area. There's also these demarcs, so the kind of demarcation point where the ISP's network ends and then you're into the premise, and that's going to become a key concept that we'll launch into the devices from. You can see there's a lot of other detail that we can provide, so whether it's kind of more upstream things like OLTs, even the poles and splitters that are feeding the different demarcs, all of that can be included all the way down to ONT ports, and we'll look at the mapping between ports and their ONTs as we go on. But there's a great deal of data that we can track through here, as you'll see, and we'll be looking into some of these individual elements as we move through the system. So I mentioned demarcs, so let's jump into the next thing that I've got to show here. So just let the page load in, and what we'll see is one of those demarc points. You can see there's a lot of metadata that's tied to this. So of course the location, which is helping drive the mapping that you're just seeing, and things like splice and drop tower information, the kind of fiber data that you'd expect. And of course these can represent other things for and other concepts for different types of network deployments. But a lot of data that we can tie to the demarc and see what's feeding it. And this is beginning to give us a map of the locations that we're serving, the equipment that is serving them, and then all of the upstream information. So we want to begin tracking back through the network where possible, so we can understand anywhere that we can put information into the system, say, okay, that is out of service, and then that can ripple down to any of the connected equipment. You'll see there's this nested relationship of parent devices, child devices that's available within the system. Actually, the first kind of point of that we'll see here is within the demarc, we have the idea of a device. So in this case, we have an ONT, which is our termination point, and you can see the piece of equipment that's actually deployed within this location and being fed by the details that you see here. If we're moving into a device, I'll just pick a good example that I've got ready for us here. So moving on to the details tab here, we can see, in this case, rather than the device itself, what I've selected is a port, still represented as a device. Those who are familiar with Triad will be familiar with this kind of setup, the idea of representing these two data ports as devices within the system. So whereas far down the chain as we'll tend to go with this one, unless again we may have some customer premise equipment that's connected, and we may be able to see which port that's attached to and that type of thing. But in this case, we're just tracking to this provisionable point. So this how we use this within the system when these are allocated to customers as part of the field service process. So when someone's gone out in the field, and we'll have a look at work orders in a second, but they allow you to map these devices that then can be provisioned by the OSS, and that's all driven by business logic within here, saying that you've got certain services in place, and then you have the piece of equipment deployed and its provisionable elements that we're tracking as well. Then yeah, all of that can be provisioned, and that's going to give us all of the triggers that we need to get the right elements provisioned to get service lit up for this customer. You can actually see in this device structure here, in this case, we're representing, as it says, the structure of the device, the mapping of the ports, and this goes back to, if I zoom the right way, apologize, to the actual upstream device here. This will be the device that it's connected to. So this is its parent device. I mentioned before that we have these parent-child relationships, and this is how it kind of plays out. And yeah, you can see the status and location of the devices represented in the system there. And we can apply this these views to all of the relationships of devices. So if you've got a system where you have got OLT data, OLT devices represented, or the actual cards within that OLT as well, we can map all of that along the chain. So again, you can present a user with these nested views where they can track back along and see which upstream equipment there is. And again, we're going to get into alerts and the kind of data that we can tie to these records, but it gives a lot of context to what's going on within the system and what may be impacting what. So I'm going to look at a different kind of device now. So again, this is a OSS managed device, something that we're going to provision. Again, there may be different views of this that we provide depending on the capabilities of the device, the capabilities of the EMS that's in place, and the level of control and how we can interface with that. But we'll present the kind of actions that we can do directly within specialized views like this. So here I'm looking at a device that we have that kind of direct management. Again, this is a DSL CPE that we have in place here. But what I can do is modify things like the SSID on the device, any other Wi-Fi configuration here, and also view any kind of stats that we might be collecting off the device as well. Now we can go into a lot of details with those statistics and provide historical data. Again, I'll show a bit of that going forwards, but we'll also be using that data to generate alerts within the system. So in this case, this device is just, you can see these are fairly recent timestamps here. This device is just being monitored when it's hitting certain thresholds for monitor parameters that will push an alert into the system. So again, we could do this with any of the devices. So when I was talking previously about following our way up the chain here and being able to navigate to the upstream record, or just follow it through the associations here, you could go back and find upstream devices that may have alerts. You may have something telling you that the upstream device that's feeding that connection is currently offline or experiencing major issues, and that would be typically somewhere where the alert information is then going to lead to cases being generated. So this is where we're going to get out of just the basics of a device. So this is really the information that powers devices. And I've been getting to these views through different apps within the system. Again, these are tailored towards specific users, but I'll jump into customer service here. Actually, I'm kind of a few spoilers there, but if I start with just my home view here as a customer service agent, the first thing I'm presented with is a dashboard of any cases that I have assigned to me. I'm also able to be part of queues, so anything that is generating cases in the system, be it emails or even phone calls through omni-channel interactions. There's lots of different integrations that you can do to get cases fed into the system and give your customers ways of having these ways of generating cases. Or tickets would be probably the more familiar terminology to many, but yeah, the idea being here, as an agent, I need to go in, I need to address issues for a customer, and as you can see, the alerts that have been generated, a few of those have been pushed to cases in this case. So if I move into this first one here, from my CSR view, again, I've got the information of where this has come from. If you actually look at the details, it'll bring up things like associated knowledge articles, but yeah, the alerts can drive the case functionality. You can see that the kind of origin here is from the IoT side. So again, the connected field service where we bring in all the device information. This can be then tracked through the system so that if we get to the point where I've escalated this to a work order and someone has to go in the field and that's the only way to resolve this issue, that information is then forever in the system, so that when those alerts come in future, it can inform users. So again, we're already getting suggestions here about other cases that again have been generated through the alerts, and I can look at whatever the case resolution was here. again, we put a note in to say that this was a rebooted device, so the other agents can be informed about how cases have been resolved, and again, we'll tie back to those original IoT alerts. And again, this is feeding a lot of the AI under the system as well. It's going to be doing analysis of the alerts. You can do clever things like auto case generation as well through the alerting process. So there is a lot that you can do with this. Also, while we're in the context of a CSR agent, it's important to point out those earlier screens that I showed you. If I'm a CSR just trying to do my day job, I'm doing it all within this workspace. I'm not having to navigate between any of these different applications. It's all pulled together, and I just have these tabs where I can keep my cases open that I'm working on, but I can navigate to any of the account details, which means I can then go through. Again, being an administrator, I see lots more options in here, but I can see any of the associated devices to that account, and even go to the kind of screens that I was showing you previously, where I can see the relationships of devices, and I can then do things like a reboot potentially from this screen directly, following on from what I've seen in that other ticket. So all of this information tied together about the devices, their relationships, how those can tie into the customer service functionality directly. This is really what we're pulling together here with the unified device management. Now, if you're curious about some of that data that's underneath, again, the idea here is that we're trying to make this as noise-free for a CSR agent. So we don't want to overwhelm them with lots of kind of difficult to understand data. It's really about getting alerts in here and informing this user of when this customer's been having a bad time. But we can also embed more detailed information, especially for more technical users here. But within this, we can do the sort of wider network analytics as well. Again, just jumping into one that I have some good data on, but this is a LTE network, and this is where all that data is underneath. So all of that kind of noise that I'm mentioning about what specific values are like at any given time. Again, also there's just a bit of a longer time frame here. All of this kind of noise, again, for CSR, this is all masked. This is all just the key information for them. But if you are more on the engineering side and want to see what's happening with the underlying data in the network, then that is stuff that we can surface as well. And again, we would provide these views embedded into SMP, so you don't have to move between different screens. It would just be a case of user privileges and the particular applications that you would actually find those embedded views. Okay, the final thing that I'm going to talk about just within the user interface here is the work order side of things. So in this case, we moved into the field service side. So this is where I'm going to be able to book work orders, get people out in the field doing jobs. This is a whole webinar topic of its own that I'm sure we'll be covering in the near future. We probably have some already out there on this as well, but it's very comprehensive. I'm just going to touch some minor areas here, just talking about the actual devices part of it. But again, this is how having that information can inform different parts of the business. So looking at, if I take just a work order here, we'll go with a installation of a CPE. So based on the sales process, we'll have inherited information about the premise, where we're installing, what work needs to be done to actually get that customer up and running. So if I navigate into this work order, right, yeah, again, we've got our workflow here that we would follow through. But there's a lot of associated information here in terms of what needs to be used or what needs to be done to complete this work. So if I was to go and look at things like the service tasks in here, you can see that there's tasks that would be completed typically by someone using the mobile application to mark any work as complete. It will give them the order of any work that needs to take place. It'll also give time estimates for scheduling this stuff. And in the same vein, we also have the idea that you can have products that are required. So if we're going out and installing an ONT, then we need an ONT with us. This will all feed into the inventory side of the system so that when a field service engineer goes out, they will have essentially a warehouse with them. So whatever's in their truck can be mapped in if you wish to go to that level of detail. And then as they do the install and confirm this work is complete, it's going to remove this from their inventory as this particular product has been used. Again, inventory, you could get into a whole world here of the actual products that are set up in the system. Again, you can have a great level of detail in this, as well as the different warehouses that you can set up and how you wish to manage those. But again, it's another area where having devices tracked through the system, whether it's live equipment that you have out in your network and connecting that all into your customer service process, or on the field service side, letting them consume from inventory. And again, them doing installs on the field service side and saying, yep, that serial number 123 that's just got into that customer's house is what automatically drives everything. So you saw the association of accounts and devices, which let me as a CSR really quickly get to any of the capabilities that I needed. That's the real idea behind unified device management. So with that, we'll just go to a couple of slides to wrap up. Okay, and back to a final couple of slides here. So just looking at the business outcomes that we've had from using the unified device management functionality in SMP. So we saw on the field service side, of course, we're able to use the dependencies, so dependencies on devices to fulfill the information of a work order, make sure that someone in the field knows what equipment they're going to need, and also track that through the inventory system as well. That feeds into the scheduling, of course. So if we're picking resources that are available to do a job, they must be resources that have access to the stock to actually complete that work. On the CSR side, we've put a lot of key information in the hands of a CSR. So the KPI data from the device being tied to the customer record. So seeing that it was only really a couple of clicks from navigating to an account to finding the kind of alert historical information that we were looking for, and then the ability to push all of that stuff into cases, or from the other way around. If I'm just going into a case view, I'm picking something off a queue and looking to work with it, then I can tie it back and see that thread through to any original alert that created it. We can also, as from the CSR side, begin to resolve issues directly. So as you saw with the user interface in there, where it's possible to send commands to devices, reprovision and reconfigure devices. So a lot of possibilities for CSR agents to remotely resolve issues and only escalate to field service when really needed. It's also provided a single pane of glass. So we've stayed within a single user interface for all of the key data when we've been wearing our field service hat or wearing our CSR hat. It's all been within SMP, and that nested view from an account, device, location, all of this data tied together made it easy to navigate through and tie together any of the key data points that we've needed. So I've not had to swivel chair, I've not had to move between lots of different applications, where typically this data would be in a number of disparate locations and wouldn't necessarily be available to a CSR agent or to field service as well. So anyway, that concludes our look at unified device management. If you do want to know more, feel free to reach out to me. You can see my email on screen. Also through our website, there's various ways to contact us. We'd be keen to show you more if you're interested. I'll happily dive into more depth on any areas where people are interested. So let us know any feedback you have, and we'll be keen to show you more as we continue to develop this and continue to add more features and functionality to our product set. Thank you for your time.